cord to my, okay. So Judy and Chuck, I'm turning it over to you.
Everybody, we're really, really glad.
Can't hear Judy.
You
Can't hear Judy.
Can't hear Judy.
She is not muted.
Oh, you're not muted. That's weird.
She's too soft to hear.
Can you hear me now?
Vaguely.
You are not close enough to the microphone.
Barely.
That doesn't make sense.
How about here? How's that?
We can hear
Yeah.
Chuck clearly.
Okay. Thank you.
No.
Still not hear Judy.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Barely.
Barely. You're not loud enough.
Okay, I hear you now. Can you hear me?
You and Chuck should switch places.
Switch places?
Chuck was very loud, so you and Chuck should probably switch places.
Okay. How is it now? How is it now?
Not great. It's not great. Can you check the settings on your computer?
Sorry.
I wonder if it doesn't pick up a higher pitch.
Yeah, Judy, maybe you should tell Chuck what to say.
This found it. See this found it. Are there things in real time? If there are any. Okay. Your max. You got you. You got it.
All right, cut that out. Okay.
Good luck, guys.
All right. So how is this now?
That's clear. Very clear.
Okay. We went on a trip about a year ago with
You hear Judy though?
adventure travel. Yes, Judy?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So actually a year ago today, we were in Puerto Varas, Chile, on our month-long adventure in South America. For the most part, we were in the countries of Chile and Argentina, except for one afternoon in Brazil, which we'll tell you about later. As I mentioned, we were traveling with Overseas Adventure Travel, a travel company that Chuck and I really love. We've traveled with them a number of times. And one of the reasons why we like OAT is that they really do a great job exposing the travelers to the highlights of the countries, but then they also make an effort to have you get to know real people and the culture of the various places that we visit.
Chuck, it's not clear to hear from you now. It was much clearer before.
I think the microphone is more on the right. Is that better?
Great.
Okay. So the first part of the trip was up here where we flew from Santiago, Chile to Easter Island and back. The second part of the trip the main trip was starting in Buenos Aires, going counterclockwise to the upper part of Patagonia, the Lake District, both on the Argentine side and the Chilean side. And then we flew down to the tip of the continent in Puerto Varas, and then went through the glacier region and the mountains, and then back to Buenos Aires. And the last part of the trip was an extension where we went from Buenos Aires to the border with Paraguay and Brazil, and crossed over into Brazil, saw Iguazu Falls, and then after several days came back. So this is the beginning of the trip where we flew into one of the Santiago, 6 million people.
Chuck, you
You're
gotta
fading out, Beth.
keep focusing on that microphone, because when you move away, we lose you.
So is this good?
It's better, but not as good as it was before.
Okay. Or on this side?
That's much better.
Okay, I think the microphone is on this side. So basically, this is our first slide. The first day we got there early, crossed the Mapucho River, and decided to go to the city park, which is wedged in a section of the city. We would go to the top and view the surroundings. We took the cable car, and here you can see the tallest building in all of South America, a little better in this view. This is the financial center. Behind this, about 90 miles on the Argentine border, is Mount Aconcagua, the highest peak in the whole Western Hemisphere, 22,000 feet. This is the cable car on the other side of the park. We took this down to see the home of Pablo Neruda. He won the Nobel Prize for poetry, for literature in 1971. He had one home on the street, and then he built one up the hillside to get a better view. And he had eclectic tastes, sculptures, art. He had some whimsy in this home. In the center is his bar, where he had portholes like a sea captain's voyage, and with souvenirs of his villages. He had a secret door in his dining room and a spiral staircase behind it where he can appear behind the door and surprise new guests. This place was called La Chascona. Further down in town was the presidential palace, the La Moneda, and this was bombed by the Chilean Air Force in, 1973, to get Allende out of power. So it turns out that Neruda was a supporter of Allende, Salvador Allende, and he was a diplomat, and he was the ambassador to France. He was also a senator. And rather than surrender, Allende supposedly committed suicide. 12 days later, Neruda died, and there was some suspicion he might have been poisoned. Next good story is Valparaiso. Valparaiso is the other capital of Chile. It is on the bay. This is the legislative center where there is a Senate and a Chamber of Deputies. The center of town is Sotomayor Plaza, and this is surrounded by government buildings and museums. It is interesting architecture, and You can take, it's so steep on the hillside that you need a funicular to get places. You can see homes on the hillsides. You can see various European style buildings that served as hotels or embassies. There's a lot of street art in this portion of Valparaiso. This is more. And then we went on one morning to Easter Island. Easter Island is, of course, famous for these figures that are carved out of volcanic stone. There are over 900 of them. Some of them are buried, some of them are broken, but this is the big site. Something about the history, it is suspected that Polynesians came from the Marquesas Island or around Pitcairn Island before the year 500. Moa carving went on for hundreds of years, and it reached its peak somewhere between 1100 and 1500. They don't have great records or written memories. That there's a script, Rongo Rongo, that no one can read. They know that there was a birdman cult that took over when the Moa were no longer being carved. And that lasted about 200 years. What we know from contact with outsiders is that the Dutch admiral, Jacob Roggeveen, was first saw the island on Easter Sunday in 1722. He stayed overnight in the boat. He visited them for a total of 24 hours and recorded that the Moa were 20, 30 feet long, and they were mostly standing. He recorded that that there were woodlands around. The Spanish visited 48 years later, briefly, and claimed the island for Spain. James Cook came by in 1774 and felt that things had not been going well for the people. He didn't see many woods, and most of the Moas he found were coppled. But this is a wide island with people settled on the shore, so there could be a sampling error between what the different people found. They could have done worse because maybe some of the first two trips released some diseases or rats or something. By the way, Polynesians often travel with chickens. The only animals that could survive long sea voyages. We know that things took a bad turn later after these visitors when Peru sent people to raid the island and capture slaves to work digging up guano. When the slaves were free, they came back and some of them brought smallpox. So this is my favorite Moa. This one had his eyes restored. These are, well, the idea was you carve the Moa at one end of the island, the eastern end, and transport it to the village where it stands. And very often they're standing on stone platforms. One thing that happened was sometimes they fell over by a tsunami or an earthquake, but also there was a period of civil war when one tribe would wage war on another and sometimes topple their Moas. This is a red crown that comes from iron-containing stone on a different part of the island. The eyes were made from shells, and the center was a colored stone. It turned out that these were partially carved at the mountain, except for some of the face. That was carved locally where it was going to be put up, according to the best understanding. There are angular noses, angular jaws, closed lips, and they felt that an essence of the person, the Moa, represents was put into it when it stood up and had the eyes put in. So what you'll see here are 5 moa on the western shore. Here's the horse grazing.
We're having trouble hearing you again, Chuck. You got to lean towards the mic.
Yeah, here is the 4 at the western end where you can see them in sunset. Here are 15 moa. These were knocked down once during the Civil War and then knocked down in 1960 by a tsunami. They brought a boat with a crane to put these upright again. Some of them have crowns, different sizes. This is the part where the moas were carved, and the name escapes me at the moment. But some of them were dropped and broken and left. Some of them were just frozen in time because moa carving stopped for unknown reasons suddenly. Here is a moa being carved out of the rock of the mountain, and it was thought to be 60 feet long, huge, but it is the largest one that they ever found. So going down to one end of the other end of the island, the eastern end of the western end of the island, this is one of the volcanoes that got filled up with a lake. And this is the rim of the volcano. This is a freshwater lake with reeds and other plants growing. And this was an important location because there was a big ceremonial village right on the other side of this. This is the sea. We're overlooking the ocean. And this village had a number of huts where the athletes would camp in the spring. And also here was a place for the chieftains of the different villages. And what would happen would be the chiefmen would want to be the birdman for the year. And this is how the chief would dress, as a birdman. And what his athlete, he would select one athlete from his tribe. The athlete would go from the crater rim, come out of his cave where he slept every night, waiting for the birds to come back. And the birds would land on this island and have their eggs. So the athletes would climb down the cliff, swim across shark-infested waters, climb the cliffs, and try to find an egg. And they would have to take the egg, put it in a reed basket held onto their head, climb down, swim back, climb up this cliff, and present it to their chief. And they announced that he was coming back. The chief would get shaved. Last thing about this was they constructed an instruction place about what things look like. This is artificially done to show visitors. Because of the shortage of wood, they would heat stones with wood and then bury food wrapped in reeds in this to cook. This was a chicken coop. The chickens went in right here, and they would come out, and that was food. This is a hut. They're only used for sleeping. This is reed covered right on the village. And this is Judy and Chuck with our friends before our trip back to
We're not hearing you now.
Okay, I'm back. Is this okay?
down here.
No, we're not hearing you.
Is this better?
Yes, you can pull the computer towards you so that you can, because it won't affect showing your
Right.
screen. so
Right.
that you can be closer to the mic.
Okay. Is that better?
Much better, yes.
Great. Okay, so we're on to the second part of our trip, which was on the South American continent in Argentina and Chile, and beginning in Buenos Aires. Buenos Aires is a really lovely city, wonderful place to walk around because of all the parks and the tree-lined streets. Lots of European style architecture. The South Americans were very enamored of Europe and made many visits there and then tried to reproduce the architecture.
Lost her.
Nope, we're losing you. You got to stay really close to that mic.
Okay.
So we didn't hear the last part.
Okay. The, there's a lot of European style.
Still not coming through. You got to get closer to the microphone.
Hearing nothing.
No, we're not hearing you. Pull the computer towards you where the microphone is.
How is this?
Go ahead and let's hear it.
How is it now?
Now it's better.
Okay. So one of the most recognizable landmarks in Buenos Aires is the obelisk. The obelisk was built in 1936 to commemorate the 400th anniversary of the founding of the city. The obelisk is the place where people go when they want to celebrate, and the picture in the lower right-hand corner was taken as part of the celebration when the Argentine soccer team won the World Cup. This is one of the most famous streets in Buenos Aires and really in the world. It's called July 9th Avenue. And as you can see, it's a very, very wide street with, in some parts, 7 lanes going in each direction. Over here is Plaza de Mayo. The pink building that you see here is called Casa Rosada, or the Pink House. It's the official workplace of the president. The plaza is a place where people come for rallies and protests. And this pyramid here was commemorates, is the oldest monument in Buenos Aires. And what struck us about this were the outlines of the headscarves that actually go around the pyramid. And what this is a commemoration of the mothers of May Square. These are women who for the last 40 years have been rallying every Thursday as a way to demand justice for the thousands of people who were kidnapped, tortured, and killed during the Argentine military dictatorship in the years between 1976 and 1983. One of our favorite places in Buenos Aires was La Boca, the Boca neighborhood. It's a very popular destination in Buenos Aires. It was originally settled by immigrants who didn't have a lot of money for materials, so they salvaged what they could find. There are a lot of, as you can see, corrugated pieces here. And it's really characterized by lots of bright colors. The other thing is that there are lots of statues, and you can see Chuck next to the Pope. And then up on one of the balconies, Eva and Juan Perón, as well as an Argentinian soccer player. Lots of art displays along the street, as well as tango dancers. And actually the tango was born in the La Boca neighborhood. We got to have a tango lesson while we were in Buenos Aires, but this is probably showing tango in our best form. This is the Teatro de Colón, the opera house. It's a really beautiful building on the outside, but and even more beautiful on the inside. At the time of our visit, there were no performances because the opera season goes from April through December. But we were able to take a tour of the opera house, which was really wonderful because it has such a beautiful interior. This is the foyer, and you can see the marble staircase along with a close-up of the banister. And here we have some of the stained glass on the left side, the cupola over the foyer, as well as more stained glass. This is the golden hallway that leads into the concert hall. You can see the beautiful, beautiful chandeliers, and a close-up of some of the furnishings and curtains. This is the concert hall, which seats 2,400 people. And the ceiling shows a depiction of various musicians with their instruments. The chandelier in the concert hall weighs a ton, and it has 700 light bulbs. You wouldn't think that, we're onto another site, you wouldn't think that a cemetery would be on a tour of a major city, but it is in Buenos Aires, because the Recoleta Cemetery is definitely one of the city's top attractions. The cemetery is located in the Recoleta neighborhood. It's the oldest cemetery in the city, dating back to 1822. And it's about 5 blocks by 5 blocks, laid out kind of like the streets of the city. There are over 6,400 statues, coffins and crypts in the cemetery. And 70 of the monuments are actually classified as national monuments. Probably the most visited place in the cemetery is the mausoleum for the Duarte family, of which Eva Perón was a member. That Duarte was her maiden name. And you can see that, and I think she's buried something like 30 feet below. That is where her grave is. And I think most of us have heard of Eva Perón, probably through the musical Evita. Eva Duarte was 25 years old when she met Juan Perón, and there was kind of like a love at first sight. They married this was in the year 1944. They married a year later, and Juan Perón became president a year after that. So he was almost twice her age.
We were not able to hear what Chuck said. Still cannot hear you, Chuck.
Wow. How about now? How about now?
Yes, it's fine now.
Okay. So he was 50 years old when they married, and she was 26. And they both had some poorness in their background, and they were very popular with the crowd because of that. She was a bit actress for a while at a grade B. She did star in one movie. And there was a huge earthquake. And she and Perón, who was like a lieutenant general, appeared at the obelisk to raise funds. And they were very popular. And he was subsequently became a politician and became elected president.
So now, Judy, we're not hearing you. Still not hearing you. Nope, not hearing you.
Sadly, Eva Perón, can you hear me now?
We heard the beginning, but we lost you at the end. Nope, it's not getting through. You got to somehow get closer to the microphone.
Now, the problem is we don't know exactly where the microphone is.
That is a challenge.
On Judy's
I
computer.
realize.
These
So
new computers are problems. So she died at the age of 33 of uterine, supposedly of uterine cancer. And her body was moved around quite a bit.
To that end,
So, Judy, move closer to where Chuck had been.
is that better?
That's much better.
Okay. There is an Evita Museum in Buenos Aires dedicated to her memory. And it has a wonderful collection of portraits, photographs, and even many examples of the clothes that she wore. So that was a wonderful place to visit. So in our regular everyday lives, we do not eat a lot of meat and certainly not a lot of beef. But one of the things that people do when they're in Buenos Aires is they go to a paella, or also known as a steakhouse. And here we are enjoying a wonderful dinner of steak, French fries, and roasted vegetables.
The beef is all grass-fed, grown on the Pampas just south of Buenos Aires.
Okay, so we're on to a new place, Bariloche, which is about 980 miles from Buenos Aires. And we went there by airplane. It was about a 2-hour flight from Buenos Aires to Bariloche. Bariloche is viewed as the gateway to Patagonia's Lake District. And it's considered to be one of the most beautiful areas of Argentina. It's located on the shores of Lake Nahuapi, which translates to Island of Puma. The first people to live there were the Mapuche, an indigenous group of people living in southern Chile and Argentina. But there was also a huge influx of Europeans in the 1800s. Bariloche made headlines in 1995 when it was discovered that Nazi war criminals were living there. You can see this is an area that's very close to the town center. The town center has a lot of architecture that's very reminiscent of an alpine village with the stonework and the wood trimming. Bariloche is definitely an area where people go to vacation. They're in the summer, there are water sports at the lake, as well in the wintertime skiing. Bariloche is also known for being the chocolate capital of Argentina. So one of the things that you must do when you're there is visit the chocolate shop. So we went to Mamushka Chocolate, and we happened to be there on a very busy day. It took us about a half hour to get inside the store, but we were rewarded by tasting, some of the best chocolate that we've ever had. One of the things that we did when we were in Bariloche was to take a chairlift ride up Campanario Hill. And there were very many beautiful sights along the way, but the real reward was when we got to the top. Just beautiful, beautiful scenes of the lake. Oops. Well, the Nahuapi is about 40 miles long. So these photographs are all of Nahuapi. The area around Bariloche is part of the Argentinian steppe, which is a dry, very dry, arid area. It's actually very conducive for cattle and horse raising. And one of the things that we did while we were there was to visit a ranch of the Hannock family. This is a multi-generational family that has been living in the area since the late 1800s. Apparently, the great-grandfather had been a cook with the military, and as payback for his services, he received all of this land. We got to do a trail ride through the Argentinian steppe, and Pancho, the second-generation son, was our guide. So in the photograph in the lower right is Pancho with both of us as we were getting ready to start our ride. We really enjoyed after the trail ride, we enjoyed a really wonderful dinner with lots of salads, as well as grilled meat. And I would say that that our visit to the Hannock Ranch was probably definitely one of the highlights of Bariloche, but of the trip as well. So now we're on to another town, and one of the things about this trip is that we were kind of going from one country to another. So Bariloche is in Argentina. We now have crossed the border into Chile to the town of Puerto Varas. And Puerto Varas' main claim to fame is that it overlooks two volcanoes. The Osorno volcano, which is on the left, and the I have to look at my notes here. The Calbuco volcano in the lower right. Go ahead.
Can't hear you, Chuck.
This is a very symmetrical mountain with a glacier year-round on the top. And it's on the eastern end of the lake. So people will wait till the sunset, and there'll be the tip of this in the right light. It's very rainy, and we were lucky to get there in nice weather.
So Osorno considered
Judy, go back to where you were because we could hear you better.
Osorno is now okay? Yes?
Yes.
Osorno is considered to be an active volcano, but it hasn't erupted since 1856. However, Calbuco actually erupted in 2015. And our local tour guide gave us very detailed, dramatic descriptions. He said he could remember exactly where he was the day that the volcano erupted. As Chuck mentioned, it rains a lot in Puerto Varas. In fact, our trip leader told us that it rains about 220 days a year. So he said, you may or may not see Osorno. And we felt like we were very, very lucky because we got there and we saw this very, very beautiful view of the volcano. The lake is a lovely area for walking around. We were struck by these wonderful metal statues. Our favorite one was the lady. I think she's actually called the lady. Chuck and I love to do walking tours, and so that was one of the things that we did. This is a house that, and you can see the German style architecture that was actually refurbished a few years ago. But in doing so, they tried to preserve as much of the original natural materials as they could. And when they did replace materials, they found ones that were as close to the originals as possible. This is the Iglesia de Sagrado, a German style church that is very much modeled on churches in Bavaria. Again, this is an area where many German people settled. We were not able to go inside the church, but we did from the internet get a photograph of what it looks like inside. So I would say that a highlight of our time in Puerto Varas was something that OAT, Overseas Adventure Travel, calls the home hosted dinner. As we mentioned before, that OAT really tries to acquaint you with people who live in the various areas where we visit. And so this particular evening, we went with 3 other travelers from our group to the home of Susanna and Perla, her mom Perla. And you can see them pictured in the lower right. Perla has actually had a bed and breakfast for the last 35 years. And Susanna works in the tourist field as well for a cruise ship line. Besides serving us pisco sours, which is probably one of the most popular alcoholic drinks in Chile, they taught us how to make empanadas. And unfortunately, we don't have any pictures of those because our hands were full of flour as we were rolling out the empanadas. But we had I would say that this was a highlight of our time because they were just so friendly and warm and welcoming. We had a great visit with them. So it was a very nice way to end our time in Puerto Varas.
So we're going to skip over Chiloé Island and go straight down to Puerto Varas, where there's the Strait of Magellan. Judy is with another member of our trip group, Linda, and in back of Judy is the Strait of Magellan, and on the far shore is Tierra del Fuego, the land of fire. And what the accomplishment of Magellan in 1522 was, he found a way to get through the tip of South America. And the significance is, this is the narrowest part of the Antarctic or Southern Ocean. And all the winds and all the currents, very strong currents and winds, are blowing eastward. And for a sailing ship to try to cross, it becomes very dangerous, if not impossible. Also, there are often icebergs that are coming east against you. So what he found was a strait, which it was kind of like a U-shaped strait. And I think here you can kind of, I can trace it on this thing if I get my pointer. Oh, here's a pointer. So basically you come in this way, going northwest, then you come this way, then you come down here, and you avoid going into this terrible problem area, but you go around up to Punta Arenas and around this way, all the way out to here. So this is a 380-mile trip across this area, but it's safe. The narrowest part of the channel is about 1.2 miles. So here is mock.
Jock, we can't hear you.
He was aboard this with 54 sailors and his son. Also next to it was the Beagle that brought Charles Darwin on its second voyage. It brought him around South America to the Galapagos. The Beagle actually found the Beagle Channel in its first trip. Here is our travel northward to lands of glaciers, and on the left we
We're not hearing you again.
yeah, when I look at my notes, I turn away. This is where the guanacos were found along the roadside of our bus trips. These are wild relatives of llamas. Here is the rhea bird. This fascinated Charles Darwin. It is a relative of the emus. And
Yeah. So here we are on our way to Torres del Paine National Park. And we have been hearing from our trip leader the whole time that this was going to be a peak experience. So we were very, very excited about going there. And started thinking about some of the things that we had been hearing. Torre del Paine National Park, the name Torre del Paine translates to towers of blue. And one of the reasons is because the mountains reflect kind of a bluish hue in the sunlight. It's a huge national park. I think the second largest in Chile, and it's probably most famous because it is such a wonderful hiking destination, because there are really amazingly magnificent views from every direction. The other thing that it's known for is its very strong winds and changeable weather. And because of that, we were kind of wondering, well, what kind of weather are we going to find? And so we kept looking up the skies, and here we see it looks a little bit uncertain. But by the time we got there, the sun was out, the air was clear. And before we even went to our lodging, we took a hike. And it was probably one of the most memorable hikes that we've ever had. We were going to Pijo Lake. It took us about an hour to get there. We were rewarded with this very, very beautiful, beautiful scene of the lake. And I was just ecstatic. It was probably one of the high points of the whole trip for me. I don't think this picture shows my enthusiasm enough. I just couldn't get over the feeling of walking through this wonderful area. So I mentioned that the weather is very changeable. And so one of the things that they do is they try to give you guidelines for what kind of weather to expect. And the next day, when we went for a hike, we were happy because, as you can see, the wind speed was in the safe area. It can move along to the cautionary in yellow, or red is probably, don't risk it. And the first thing we did on the second day of hiking was to visit a waterfall called Salto Grande. And we went on to hike for at least another hour and a half through waterfalls, lakes, and mountains. The weather was a little bit changeable. At times we experienced a bit of rain and even sleet, but overall it was pretty reasonable. The afternoon, however, was a very different experience. We went for a hike along Gray Lake, and the wind really picked up. You can see, Chuck, I mean, this was before actually the wind got really bad, but you can see how he's got his hood up. And a few minutes later, the wind was blowing so hard, and we were actually at some points walking against the wind. It was really challenging. But somehow we survived, and got back to our lodge. We haven't said a whole lot about our accommodations, which I think Chuck and I would both agree were very nice. But my favorite place was Lago Gray Lodge, which was in Torre del Paine National Park. This is a photograph of the outside of the lodge. The one in the upper right, what it looked like from the back of the lodge, and the lower right is outside of our a photograph of what it looked outside the room where we stayed. And here's the inside of the lodge. They're really wonderful windows and you can see, just beautiful views, the lounge area as well as the bar. And this is just a fun photograph. There's a woodpecker, and he was just really fun because there were probably at least 8 people watching him, but he just stayed there, and you can see his reflection in the glass. It's a Magellanian woodpecker, which very common in this area of Chile. Food, very good. Just a sample of our dinner. Again, beef. We did have to eat a lot of beef, as well as panna cotta for dessert.
The next stop was Los Glaciers National Park in Argentina. And so we went from Chile across the border. We kept doing that. Couple things about it. We mainly went there to see the glaciers. It is the largest national park, and the ice fields are enormous. There are at least 47 big glaciers. Perito Moreno is the biggest and the most famous. Perito means expert. It's kind of like an honorary title. Moreno was a man who explored the geography, particularly the rivers of the area. This glacier is still growing. It's one that is not shrinking. And basically it is 3 miles wide, and it goes back about 18 miles. Yeah, and it's 240 feet high. So here we are coming into the area. You can see, I don't see it that well in that picture. But basically there are 3 ways to see the place. One,
Gotta lean in more, Chuck.
one is the walkway, which you can see here. The second is the boat tour, which you see here, and we did both of these. The third option is to spend a long time and money and climb on the glacier, which we did not do. Here we are overlooking the glacier. High up, you can look down and see this glacier. Here is one view. This is the biggest glacier we ever saw and the closest we would get to it. I don't know if you can see, one thing about glaciers is that the sunlight comes in and all the colors get filtered out except for blue. And you can see this best when chunks of ice fall off. You can see the blueness here of this chunk. What you have to learn to do is watch, because you see a chunk coming before you hear the crack and the sound. It's so far away from the top. Then as you go down and get in the boat, you see views like this, where you come close to it. You can't come right next to it because of the danger of falling ice. We did go on the boat. This is the last thing you can see. This is, we could see people up here climbing on the glacier.
We're not hearing you.
This is a video of that shows a panorama of the glacier. And on to the last part of our trip which was to Iguazu Falls. Here we are in the center of Iguazu.
We're not hearing you, Chuck.
This is a spot where Argentina is connecting to Brazil, and upriver a little bit is the, well, this is the Iguazu River, and there is a river from Paraguay. And there's one point where you can see all three countries.
Okay, of course, we were there to see Iguazu Falls. As Chuck said, Iguazu Falls are located on the border of Argentina and Brazil, and in two national parks, in what is subtropical rainforest. Very, very hot. It was probably in the mid 90s with really, really high humidity. But you feel cool because you're watching all this water. The name Iguazu means big water in the Guarani language. There are 275 waterfalls in the shape of a horseshoe that are fed by the river. The falls are 269 feet high and 8,858 feet wide, and considered not surprisingly one of the 7 natural wonders of the world.
Niagara, and much wider than Victoria Falls. This big waterfall is called the Devil's Throat.
So there were actually 2 ways to see the falls. 80% of the falls are in Argentina, 20% in Brazil. But people usually start out on the Brazilian side because that way you can get a nice panorama of the falls. So here we are on the Brazilian side, taking in the sights, and just there are platforms along the way where you can stop and take photographs. The day we were there were just a huge amount of people. It was a Sunday, so we had to kind of be patient as we were taking photographs. We were encouraged to be on the lookout for wildlife, and this little guy here is called Coati. He's related to a raccoon, and coatis are both ground animals, and they also like to climb trees. They in the natural in their natural habitat, they eat a lot of fruits. But what's happened in Iguazu is that tourists will often throw away some of the food they've been eating, and the Coati have started eating them, and much to the detriment of their health. They've been able to determine that these little creatures are getting diabetes. So we were really encouraged, and of course we wouldn't have done it anyway, to not feed the Coati. So this was a really amazing sight. We're looking down and we see this platform with all of these people on it. And about 20 minutes later, we got there and we realized that we were in the devil's throat. Yeah. Yeah. So it's hard to get a photograph of the devil's throat, at least the camera. I was using a cell phone, or we were using cell phones. But this is a panoramic video. Yeah. That was Chuck's video. Go Chuck. The next day, we were able to visit the falls again. This time, we were up close and personal. So people say that you go to the Brazilian side to see the panorama. You go to the Argentinian side to get up close and personal. So just some photographs along the way. Looking down, we got a preview of what we were going to do in the afternoon when we took a boat ride into the canyon. Here's a photograph to give you a sense of the falling water. In the afternoon, we did a really touristy kind of thing, but it was fun. We went with adventure tours on a boat ride into the canyon. It was really hard to take photographs because I was just worried that I was going to either lose my camera or get it so soaking wet that I wouldn't be able to use it again. So these particular photographs are from the internet, but these are a couple that we took along the way. Yeah. Really exciting, wonderful way to end our time in Iguazu.
We got somewhat wet.
So what happened is a rainforest, as I said, and it rained when we were going into the canyon. It rained while we were in the canyon, and then it rained as we were leaving. So lots of water. Okay, so we come to the end of our trip.
Chuck, we're not hearing you.
The first sight we saw in Santiago was hot weather with a big Coke delivery truck, and it said Verdad Magnifico. And we finally figured out that meant truly magnificent, or truly magnificent. And Judy found this on the internet. We didn't get that truck with the Spanish,
But we thought it was a nice way to summarize our trip. Truly magical and magnificent. The end.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you. That was absolutely fabulous. Your pictures are amazing.
Hmm.
And now you've got me wanting to take the trip.
Well,
So,
and I have to say that we were inspired to take this trip by two people who have been part of Virtual Travel Club, Nick Flatbush and Marianne Tipton. So, we can thank them for giving us the idea to go there.
well, that sounds great. I'm guessing there are some questions, and you can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question.
Should she go out of,
I'd like to know on Easter Island, why did they build the Moas?
So people thought that
Yeah.
the Moas had a power, that when somebody died, some of their mana could be transmitted into an image of them when it was placed back in their village. So other people think that maybe they were a symbol of the power of their village. Maybe it was a way that Moa, watched over them. I mean, it's not clear. Basically, there's a written script that nobody can decipher. There are stone carvings that sometimes are being destroyed. They don't have a really continuous record of exactly why the Moas started or
Yeah, I
why
see.
they disappeared.
They must weigh tons. How did they move them?
With great difficulty, they think they took down wood, logs, and rolled them. But over time, the logs were gone. So that could be one reason why they stopped using them. The British took two to the British Museum. There's one in the museum in Santiago. So some are buried. But, they don't know all the reasons why they were made and why they stopped making them.
So okay, good. I wanted them to stop screen sharing and didn't know how to make that happen. Okay, go ahead with questions for Judy and Chuck.
Yeah, so Chuck, what was the elevation of that huge glacier that you saw?
80.
280 feet high from.
Well, no, I mean the ground there, not the hill.
Oh,
How high up was?
yeah.
Chuck, we weren't able to hear your response.
I don't know that. I have the travel
Okay.
book with me.
I'll just look it up.
That's fine. That's fine.
I don't know.
How many languages were spoken on your trip? And did most of the people speak English to you or not?
So most of the people that we interacted with could speak pretty good English. There was one person who spoke Mapuche, translated into Spanish, Mapuche, the Indian language. But it was amazing how many people could speak English, but they were selected to work with us. Neither of us studied Spanish.
Yeah, so the way the trip worked was that we had a trip leader who took care of a lot of the organization and logistics. And then for each of the places that we visited, there was a local guide, and all of them spoke very good English. And as Chuck said, that we had a couple of interviews with local people, and one from the Mapuche background.
Was it mostly Spanish that was spoken, or were there a lot of other languages that you ran into?
Well, people spoke
We can't hear you.
mostly Spanish was spoken by the locals, except when we went into Brazil. Our guide was born in Brazil and he spoke fluent Portuguese. And that helped us through the border, that he could speak Portuguese. Border crossings were pretty easy. Thing I learned was that both Argentina and Chile remained neutral during during all of World War I and during most of World War II. The Germans surrendered Berlin, I think, on May 2nd. Chile,
The Nazis.
Chile, right. Well, they had many people there who were German or Italian. So it was May. In April, Argentina joined the Allies for the last 2 weeks of the war, Chile maybe a couple of weeks earlier. Interestingly, both of these countries encouraged Europeans to come and populate the Pampas and the Patagonia region to the far south. They did not have many people there to grow crops and have cattle and sheep. The Italians really liked the port area of Buenos Aires. It was warm. Germans often liked the cooler, hillier areas further south in Argentina and Chile.
So, yeah, that we're not gonna have enough free time to get out on our own.
And during the war, Adolf Eichmann went there in 1970, and the Israeli Mossad caught up with him. He had been working in a Mercedes plant in Buenos Aires.
No, they didn't go to Brazil. honey.
Oh.
And besides, Brazil's not requiring visas.
So I thought Sue and Ron might have a question.
Hi, Ron wanted to know if they needed visas because we were told we would need visas to go to Brazil, but that's changed. And I don't think you did you?
We did not need a visa.
So our tour guide was Brazilian, and basically they showed our passports, and they basically waved us in. We stayed for 4 hours on the Brazil side, and then left. So we didn't need a visa for Brazil. Also, we did not need it for Argentina and Chile at all.
So I have a question. You talked about a place where it was really, really hot, and then we saw where it was really, really cold. What were the span of temperatures that you had to be prepared for?
So we went swimming with the sharks, although we were close to shore in Easter Island in the ocean. It was quite warm. But the latitude of let's see, Santiago and Buenos Aires, it's further south than the tip of Cuba. So it's closer to the equator than you might think.
And it was warm.
But all the
Can't hear you.
the temperatures were in centigrade, so we were often, it was hard to predict warmth and cold.
Chuck is bright. He can figure out centimeters.
Where were you when it was so cold?
Well, at Punta Arenas and in the with all the wind, Torres del Paine, and also around the glacier, it was quite cold. So
Is that up in the mountains then? Is that further up?
Yep, further up, yes. The Andes are quite high.
Other questions?
Well, thank you for a wonderful tour, a fantastic presentation.
I could not have said it better. So thank you very, very much. I was so impressed with your photos. It was a great presentation, very interesting, and I'm now interested in maybe following in your footsteps. I had never thought of a trip like that, but it sounds great. Our next presentation, go ahead, Chuck, were you going to say something?
One thing is the distances are huge. So you have to take flights for several hours or very long bus trips. So it is a trek. I mean, it's like traveling across the United States. I mean, from one end of Chile to the other is the same distance of New York to San Francisco.
It's even longer, maybe.
You were gone for a month, right? Yeah, that's a long time.
Figured as long as we were going to take this trip that we wanted to do everything. So we had the option of the base trip, which was essentially Chile and Argentina, Patagonia. But then Easter Island was considered to be the pre-trip, and Iguazu was the post-trip. And we figured we wanted to do everything.
And it sounds like you did. It sounds like it was a great, great trip.
It was a great trip. The other thing is that the trip was, we started the trip 4 days after Chuck retired. So he retired on December 31st. We were leaving on January 4th. And if I had it to do over again, I'm not sure that I would have planned it that way, but we didn't realize how crazy things were going to be. But that's what happened, and luckily it all worked out.
And remind us what year the trip was?
So it was 2023.
So it's just
So it was the
like,
very beginning of last year, just a year ago. So as I said, a year ago, right now, we were in Puerto Varas.
yeah, exciting.
Halfway through the trip.
So thank you very much for doing this great presentation. Our next presentation is March 15th, which sounds early, but it's still the third Friday of the month. And Steve Harris is going to be talking to us about Spain. So
Oh, really?
we're looking forward to that. Did you remember that, Steve?
No, I thought it was more like September.
Oh, no. March 15th, next month. It's not
Time
even,
flies.
not next month. I'm sorry, I lost February in there. But 2 months, next presentation. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, Judy and Chuck, for a great presentation and fabulous pictures. We really appreciate it. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.